Okay, and welcome to the first video series of the assembly for finance.vote. So the assembly is going to be where we keep you updated as a community on what we're working on. So we're going to give you some key status updates. We're going to break down the work that we're doing into nice little packages so you can understand what we're working on, and ultimately, eventually, you're going to help us to steer us into the direction you want the network to go. So this is going to be an interesting and important touch point, and we're going to do it weekly to keep you updated on everything that we're working on. So I'm going to start with some status updates. This is the first week of the network. Our network genesis point was on the 18th of November, and that took place following a 7-hour sale on auction.vote. So in this process, we auctioned our tokens in a sequence of lots with increasing supply and price. And the price sort of went up to about 7 cents and then dropped throughout the day as buying on the way down with quite a lot of supply at the end. So people got some interesting prices, interesting price discovery process. We discovered the value of the token to be around 2 cents. We think is pretty fair, actually. And directly from that mechanism, we collected 850 ether, which was pushed non-custodially to the Uniswap liquidity pool. So we call this a liquidity bootstrapping mechanism, and that means we've collected ether and pushed it to a decentralized exchange non-custodially. We can't access that liquidity. The tokens, the LP tokens, are locked away for at least a year, and that's created a liquidity floor, a bootstrapping point for the finance.vote network. So now the goal is to start building adoption into the token, into the network, and see where we can build from there. So our auction was really interesting. It's going to be used as part of our system into the future. We've found a new way of finding token prices in a decentralized fashion, which is kind of what we're all about. The other big update is that our vote markets are up and running. The first alpha version of our vote markets has been collecting votes over the last couple of weeks. And really interestingly, last week our voters picked Yearn Finance as the top gaining token, and in fact it was. So with 158 votes, our users reached consensus that Yearn Finance was what they felt was going to be the most gaining token in a market week, and it was, which is super interesting. So 158 votes are going to be shared across 100 FVT reward pool. And remember, that's not 158 singular votes. People can vote more than once, and of course they did. So we're up and running. We've got 2 very interesting products. That was our launch phase, so now it all begins. So our genesis point was last week, and we're now moving into the phase which we've identified in our white paper to be called Obelisk. And that's about a 6-month period of building out new use cases and functionality in those 2 core products. There'll be some other additions in there as well, and building up the community with the goal of successfully transitioning the power over to the token holders so they can run the network. So we're at this launch point now, and I want to break down a few of the key work packages that we think are going to take the network through this next phase and start building as that all-important adoption. The first of these is liquidity mining. So liquidity mining is the process by where liquidity providers in Uniswap, so they stake ether and FVT in the pool, and they receive LP tokens in return. Now, liquidity mining is the process where you can use those LP tokens to gain rewards on a network. So we're doing that. We're going to create a liquidity mining pool where users can stake their LP tokens and gain access to an emission of the FVT tokens. So we're going to create something a bit new and interesting with this. You may have noticed that there's been quite a few of these liquidity mining contracts around. They were hugely big in the DeFi summer process. And in fact, what normally happens is people stake LP tokens, and then the network throws a bunch of tokens at those people. I think YFI started this one, and a project called Ampleforth with their Giza contract. And the idea is that the LPs receive part of this emission. Now, this isn't necessarily optimal. So those LPs get lots of tokens and they can dump them in the market. It's not necessarily sustainable. So we're trying to build a mechanism whereby the token holders have better control over the liquidity mining contracts. In order to do that, we're generating what we call a pulsed liquidity mining process. So Uniswap distributed 50,000 tokens at a kind of flat rate for 2 months. We're going to have something where they pulse up and down. So there's periods of quite high inflation, there's periods of quite low inflation. So high yield and lower yield. And then the cycle starts again. And we're going to look at ways of ensuring that not everyone can jump into this pool. Only a certain number of key stakeholders in the network gain access to that liquidity mining pool. There's not much point in generating a liquidity pool with $1 billion in depth if you're not got that much trade volume. So we're looking at ways of playing the liquidity mining game and looking for capital efficiency. So we think we're onto something really interesting there. The timeline to that is 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to get multiple audits on this. We want people to feel pretty confident about putting their ether in this. Some of these things, as we've seen elsewhere, have been compromised. People have lost money. We're going to do the best we can by getting those well audited and and something we think will push decentralized liquidity provision to the next level. On our vote markets, so just a quick summary of what these are. Our vote markets are a quadratic voting based prediction market system. So we present users with a list of tokens. At the moment, that's the DeFi top 10 drawn from CoinMarketCap. We took a snapshot of that, but from now on, you're going to decide what goes into the token list. So users vote on which tokens they think are going to perform into the future, and they are rewarded from a reward pool based on how correct they are. We're doing a few interesting things with this now. We've got a little bit more tuning of that product to make it really usable for our early adopters. So we're pushing a front-end upgrade that will show both the previous votes and the vote that's just come in. So the closed votes and the vote of what the crowd has guessed the token to be in the forthcoming round close. We're also going to add a user profile screen which will allow the users to be able to access the reward pool shares that they've just won in the previous round. And we're hoping to get that done in the next few days, so it won't be long. Finally, this process around figuring out what goes into our token list is going to be really important. So we're opening that process up to you as community members. You'll be able to decide what goes in our token lists. Now remember, what we're asking people to do is our voters can earn money from sorting these tokens by perceived quality, by their best likely performance. So any token that's included on this list may well gain quite a lot of attention. So that's a really important thing that we're handing over to the crowd, and we're going to do that quite soon. The other key package is media. We're going to expand, this is the very start of it, we're going to expand a kind of broadening set of video content, written content, that both explains what is happening on the network, but also what's happening in the wider market. So we're launching 2 video series. The first of these is called The Assembly, and that's going to be this video series. It's going to be me explaining what's happening on the network. We'll fill you in, week out with live technological developments. You'll see the roadmap developing. You'll see the detail around what we're working on. We're going to explain how you can get involved as a community. We think it's going to be really fun. The other video series we're launching is going to be called the Exit Poll. And that's going to look at all of the tokens in our DeFi list and the macro market context. So we're going to provide you with insights each week on how the market is behaving. We'll start to bring in some people who know crypto, people who know technical analysis, fundamental analysis, and present that with you to inform your decisions about how to vote in our vote markets. We think you'll really enjoy that one. So we're building our internal video function. So we're going to have a YouTube channel. You'll be able to subscribe to that, which will have these multiple playlists in. We'll be answering AMAs from you from within the group on there, and you'll be able to earn some money for having your questions answered, which will be quite interesting. Our goal is to use this to kind of A/B test, to test what you want, we build what you want, and the network gradually becomes steered by you. So these media functions are going to be really important for that. The other thing is we're going to start to get the word out in mainstream press. So we're going to start pushing finance.vote into the mainstream media narrative. And we're going to find some interesting hooks and way-ins for doing that. So keep an eye out for us in the mainstream news. All of this is to drive adoption to the network. It's to build understanding of a core user base. We are designed to incentivize our early adopters. The kickstart to this network is really, really important. And both our vote mining and our reward pools is a way for our early users to gain access to the FVT emission in a way that makes them key stakeholders in the network. So the vote markets are going to develop. They're starting with the DeFi top 10. We're going to open up access to all of the new tokens hitting Uniswap, and that's around 100 a day. And we think once we've got a sufficient number of people, we're going to be able to pull out which of these tokens are worth paying attention to, and that's going to be really interesting. We're also going to be looking at pre-release tokens, and in fact there'll be prediction markets around their future performance on slightly longer timelines. And we've got a big thing coming up. It's going to be a new .vote application that's part of the finance.vote ecosystem that we think will revolutionize AMAs. And that's going to involve snapshot voting. It's going to involve token stake voting. So those with bigger FVT stakes will be able to influence the questioning, influence what happens to these projects that we talk to. It's going to be quite interesting. That's where we're going to start to introduce the second layer governance consensus mechanism, and I think you'll find that quite exciting. So finally, I'd like to wrap up with partnerships. Just this week, we've partnered with two of the most interesting projects in DeFi. The first of which is Tidal Finance, and they're a decentralized insurance platform. Now, why is this interesting? Well, as we see very frequently in DeFi, some of these smart contracts get hacked. They're not even necessarily hacked. They're just vulnerabilities that are being exploited by things like flash loans, they're re-entrancy attacks. They're kind of flaws in the smart contract design that means that people can extract value from the network. Now, decentralized insurance pools are going to be a way for people with confidence to add money to DeFi products and have their money covered in case something bad happens. Now, we're going to be working with Tidal to expand the auditing process by consensus. So the decentralized identity tokens that we issue, we're going to be giving some of them to key smart contract auditors, and they're going to be voting on the perceived risk of smart contracts in the ecosystem. We think that's going to be really, really big and important for the space, so keep an eye on that one. Finally, we've partnered with Refinance, who are probably the biggest Polkadot DeFi product on the horizon. They are a really cool team. They're engaged. They're doing lots of interesting stuff on Polkadot. And they're very interested in yield optimization. We're doing similar things with our vote market. What you're essentially doing is voting on the perceived value of each of these tokens in the list. That can be used for building asset baskets, and that's where we're going to collaborate with Reef. We're going to synchronize some of our data drawn from our vote markets with their algorithmic and AI optimization tools, and we think we can build sort of passive investment strategies for DeFi, so people who don't want to get bogged down in the technicalities can get exposure to the DeFi market, which we think is going to boom over the next 6 months to a year. So that's it for the first episode of the Assembly. That's what we're working on now. Make sure you ask us questions in our Telegram group. We'll respond to them either directly in there or here on this video series. Thanks very much. Bye for now.